is there a particular pain a couple might be experiencing where they might turn to you and you can help them work through that?
Well, it's the same every time. And it's the same thing we all face, which is we blame the external world for how we feel.
Hey everyone, you're watching the Lively Charleston Podcast. Our goal with the show is to interact with and tell the stories of the amazing people, places, and businesses that make Charleston the best city in the world.
If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.
And check us out on Instagram and Facebook, where we post content regularly throughout the week. Thanks so much, guys. Hope you enjoy the episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Lively Charleston Podcast. We have a really fun guest today, one of most interesting men I believe I've ever met, and I mean that as a compliment and also factually. And so we're going to get into why, but I want to start out with a quote that encapsulates what I think a lot of our conversation will be about today. And this came from our guest. He says, "My business is dedicated to enhancing people's quality of life. We understand that beyond the fundamental needs of survival, perception becomes paramount because the way our minds interpret our experiences is truly what defines our well-being." Powerful. Let's welcome Mr. Ean Wood to the podcast.
Thank you. It's
Man,
so good to be here.
Thank you for coming out to hang out with us and chat with me here for a little bit.
And I love that this started from a cold plunge in a sauna.
Man, it did. And through a mutual friend as well, our buddy Jordy,
Yep.
who kind of connected us. Yep, shout out Jordy, who connected us, and then we met. We did it with a group of 6 or 7 other guys, doing some sauna and cold plunge therapy.
Yeah.
Awesome experience.
Yeah.
Awesome experience. Well, let's take it back. We have a lot to talk about, so I think we need to get right into it here.
Let's go.
Let's kick it off with kind of what brought you to Charleston, how long you've been here.
That's the whole podcast in itself.
We'll take it back. Yeah, that could be 30 minutes right there.
Okay. I'll try to be crisp. I was living in Mexico. I had been there for about 2 years. When the pandemic went down, I had just started my business online. My friends were living in Mexico. Things seemed really chill there. They were surfing. They were in the sunshine. So I was like, I'm going. So I had been living in Mexico. A teacher that my dad introduced me to when I was real young, his name's Joe Dispenza, took me to a movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, way back. I was a teenager. So I was going to see this teacher for the first time in person in Cancun, Mexico. I had learned to live life in a very unique way as a professional snowboarder, as a commercial fisherman. I could just kind of flow. And I was kind of in that state. I went to see the teacher. I met an amazing woman that lives here in Charleston. But there was something crazy about it. I had heard of Charleston, but it never stuck in my mind. But on that trip, I met 3 people that were from here. So it was just like, and it was Mount Pleasant specifically.
Really?
And I met one person, they said they had a business here. I met another woman, she had a house here. And so then when I met this woman that I was attracted to, that I had feelings for, that we connected, and she was from Mount Pleasant, I was just like,
things are aligning here.
Something's talking to me
Okay.
to pay attention. And I remember being like, all right, I'm paying attention. And right after that, it was a week-long meditation retreat. And I had a flight to California 2 weeks after that event, because I leave Mexico in the hot season. And I had 2 months open for summer with no plans whatsoever. I had a one-way ticket to California. I was going to staff a men's training in California. So it seemed like a calling to come here and just check it out, to see if we would get along, to see if I liked the place.
Yeah.
I came here. There was a thriving men's community. I'm sure we'll get into talking about that I just dropped right into, and the rest is history. I've been here for about 1.5 years now.
Really? Okay. So you so you were living in Mexico before you got here.
Yeah.
Not to take us back. You have one of part of the reason I think you're one of the most interesting people that we've had on the podcast is because you have such a wild background of experiences. You mentioned briefly you were a commercial fisherman in Alaska. I was checking out, some of your Instagram, and there's some video footage on there of what you're doing. I mean, it's like the show on TV, like what's it called, The Biggest Catch or something?
Deadliest, yeah.
Deadliest Catch.
So they're catching crab, but we're doing salmon.
Okay.
So a little different, but yeah, it's got the vibe.
Like exactly. Okay. You've been a pro snowboarder. You've been a writer. You are a writer. You have a pretty broad spectrum of experiences.
Definitely. I grew up a skateboarder and a snowboarder, and I think part of that rebellion to be like the rest of the world really imprinted in me. The punk scene, the metal scene, like I just wanted to live life differently. And so I followed that, and it's just continuously evolved. Obviously, I have to live within the structure of reality, the structure of society. So there's this constant adaptation to who I am and what I want to create in my life in different chapters. And this chapter in Charleston's completely different chapter for me.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. As a skateboarder, who's your favorite skateboarder? Was it Tony Hawk?
No, I loved John Cardiel. He was this bowl skater.
Okay.
I was really into like transition and pools and kind of like 80s skateboarding style.
Oh, nice.
Fast and high and
yeah. Remember, I'm sure you saw the movie. Was it Lords of Dogtown? Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, super good.
Great movie. Like, kind of the
and
classic.
I love when stuff like that is brought into the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you transition into Charleston. You get immediately into this men's community, so now you're making contacts. You're making friends. Had you already kind of decided what direction your business was going, or was that impactful on that?
Yeah, my business, the direction has stayed the same. I'm really into the online space, but what's evolved from being in Charleston and putting roots down here is that now I'm being called more to in-person because I have an opportunity to do that. I feel like the same way that life kind of magnetized me, brought me here, it's also calling me to be a co-creator of those kinds of spaces. My partner has it's a chiropractic office, but really it's a conscious community center because she does huge community events, has an amazing space I've been able to teach in several times already. I'm putting on an event once a month for women right now, but I'd like to put on an event once a month for men. I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like and kind of feels like, because that's where my passion has evolved in being in Charleston, is being back into the in-person spaces, because I just dedicated myself to online for a long time.
And is that because you were living in Mexico, you were working with a lot of Americans, and so that was kind of the medium?
Yeah, I chose online for, once again, coming from the snowboard background, the background that has like freedom's number one for me. I've prioritized freedom over most other things, the ability to be flexible, to live life the way that I want to. So online was perfect.
Yeah.
And then I was working with coaches and teachers online, so I was getting the medium that way and seeing that it was powerful. So it started, and it will always, I believe, for me, foundationally be a lot online, because I literally can work with people all over the world.
Why not?
I work with people in so many countries. It feels amazing. And now what's happening in Charleston is I'm like, okay, there's something special about being in person. There's something special about being in groups, not online, because a screen is a different dimension.
100%. And one of the things, and no reason you can't do both, which it looks like is what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of having an online business, is that it scales, right? You can work with somebody in Indonesia and have a personal relationship, a client relationship, and bring value to them. And I've really been sensing lately, tell me if this is something that you agree with. There's been kind of after the COVID thing and everybody was working from home, I feel like there's almost kind of circling back to, everybody bought a Peloton on the planet. And now, like, people want to go back to the in-person experience, and they want to go one-on-one or small group or just be around people, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Because that happened not through choice.
Right. Yeah.
It was forced.
It was taken from us.
It was taken. And I mean, it makes sense to me to get off the Peloton and then get on the bike and actually ride down the road.
Right.
I think it's beautiful. I support, that's the kind of humanity I support, is being out in it and not a ton on screens. So it is a dance. It is this dance of how can we utilize online to work with people. I think we're going to see massive changes in schools, the way that they operate, because of the way things went with COVID. But it's also going to open up opportunities for kids to work with teachers all over the world and be in different kinds of classrooms and all that. But definitely a flux going back to in-person. And that's kind of what I'm wanting to get myself into.
So when you host these events, you run these events for women or for men, are you diving into and teaching masculine and feminine energies, or what's kind of involved?
It can, the thing I'm doing monthly with women right now is called Empowering the Feminine. And there is a lot of that, but there's a lot of room for me, the women's event right now is about making space for expression. I think a lot of women have not been able to express their bigness. The world's actually encouraged them to be small and quiet and pretty. But I think there's a lot of big rawness to women that a lot of them haven't actually got connected to. So I actually bring the men from the men's community that know how to hold space for big men. We hold men through processes that are wild, the deepest, darkest experiences of their lives for them to feel things that they haven't felt before. And we have the ability, and we bring that space for women to just be like, come be as big, take up as much space as you want. Some of them are able to, some of them are shy, timid on the side, and it's always a little bit different. So
yeah,
I haven't figured out quite what I want to do with the men's events and masculinity, but that the energetics are always in there, and it's going to be different for whatever develops for men. I really want to do it in community style. I want to focus on, men so much get permission to work on their physicality. Physical fitness is totally accepted. Mindset is getting more and more accepted. But there's still kind of this straying away from emotion. Spirituality is kind of just selected for the churches. And there's kind of this full spectrum thing that I think is missing for men doing in community, where it's like, let's get fit. Let's get our mind right. Mm-hmm. Let's be emotionally intelligent, and let's have our own unique connection to spirituality, not just what we're told to believe.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Jordan Peterson has a quote, not word for word, I'm not reading it, but it's, to summarize it, it's something like, a good man is not a man that's incapable of causing harm. A good man is a dangerous man that chooses not to cause harm, or something like that.
I think it's brilliant, and I think it's very... I'm in this phase right now. I've always been a pretty nice guy. I've always been almost to the point of fawning, if you know that survival mechanism, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is like, I'm going to please you for my safety.
Got it.
And so I've kind of been on that end of the spectrum. So I'm inviting in kind of more of that masculine, and there's a little bit of wildness in there that is the protector, that is the hunter, that is all of that is healthy. Obviously, it can sway and go into dangerous. We've seen a lot of it in the world, but I love that quote because, I don't have those skills right now. That doesn't mean I'm a better man. It just means I don't know how to do that stuff.
Right.
It's not a choice. And I think, I want to get into jiu-jitsu and these different things to build up that strength. And I actually love that quote. And I think there's deep conversation around it.
Yeah, absolutely. We could probably go on. If we went down that rabbit hole, we'd probably go get a little off track here. What about working with kids? When you talk about what you're teaching the women, the first thing that comes to my mind, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's shy, and she does not like the spotlight, and she doesn't like to be big. Like you said, if she has too many eyeballs on her, she wants nothing to do with it, right? Even if it's her talent or what she's great at, she doesn't want to put it on display. And I try to work on bringing this out of her, but it's hard. Totally. Do you have any vision for that?
I really want to work with younger people. That's, we talked about the big vision of that company earlier. That's my big vision, is I'd love to work with 18 to 24-year-olds when they're just coming out of basically the strongest programming of their life that they'll ever get, which is being raised in a household that you don't have choice. You're born into that family. The circumstances you get shape a big part of who you are. And I want to work with the younger people, but kids, I think kids, all you can do is lead them in the best way that you can, and encourage and make space for them. And simultaneously, they have to go through all that they're going to go through to give them their unique experience. Yeah. Like, she might be here just to experience caging herself in that way, to not be seen, to not express, to someday break through that and maybe become a public speaker, maybe do music, whatever it is. But all you can do is continue to open that door, in my perspective. But I think, as someone that, I say, one of my missions, my purpose is on quality of life. And I started working with older people originally in men's work. And it's so much harder to work with someone that's mind's been programmed to see the world in a certain way for so long. Whereas younger kids, their minds are so much more malleable. The neuroplasticity is still there. And I think for big change in the world is to just invest a ton in the youth and mindset and all those things that I spoke about.
Amen. Amen. What are some of these? So in addition to developing the men's programs, what are some of the other projects you're working on?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that loves variety to the fault that sometimes I have to reel it in and focus.
Yep, me too.
So I actually just started last night. I do online trainings for men. The one we just started is called Forged by Fire. So we really focus on that kind of yang, inner fire, facing challenges together. So that's a huge passion of mine. I do one-on-one coaching in a variety of ways. I work with women, I work with men, I work with couples. I really love working with couples lately. There's something, I don't know, my life's really shaped me, directed me to have that in my pocket of experience.
Yeah, okay.
So I like working with couples. And
is there a particular pain a couple might be experiencing where they might turn to you and you can help them work through that?
Well, it's the same every time. And it's the same thing we all face, which is we blame the external world for how we feel. And this is what we do in relationship. I feel this way, and you did this.
You made me feel that.
You did this, and that's why I feel this way. And there's a book. So I'm training in what's called parts work, which is from a background of internal family systems. And there's a book, You're the One You've Been Waiting For. It's this whole perspective of taking radical responsibility for how we feel. Obviously, if there's boundaries we need to set and things, there's a scale of what's not acceptable. But being in a relationship where you look at how you feel and yourself, where does that come from? Why is there so much energy for me in the way they just didn't put the dishes away? Why am I so angry? Right. Oh, that reminds me of when I grew up and this happened. There's always a background to what's happening. And relationship, I think, is the greatest path to personal development. But you have to be in a relationship that sees things that way. We are bettering ourselves in a relationship. You're not responsible for my happiness. I'm not responsible for your happiness. We were working on ourselves and creating a higher quality of life together.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned parts work. I got exposed to that a couple years ago, and I had the opportunity to work with a gal. She was amazing in the upstate. Her name was Christine. And we did, I was a little skeptical on it at first.
Totally.
And I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. A little bit, yeah. It's different than other forms of working through therapy or whatever.
Right? You have to let go of that logical, analytical mind.
Right, exactly, which I'm hyper logical, analytical. And the first few sessions was kind of one of these like, I don't know really, where this is going or how much I'll do this. And then I remember having a breakthrough. I think it was in the third or fourth session. And we would do parts work and we would identify, we had this process and we would identify the part. And then she would have me describe, almost make like a superhero of what that part would look like. What would they look like?
Wow.
And I would describe that. And so then I had a visual of this part of me. They're all part of me. And then they all have a role and a purpose. And then I remember we had a breakthrough and she helped me. It was the first time I've ever had one of those connections where it was like I'm feeling a thing now and I'm having a response to some sort of stimulus here. And we tied it back to a very distinct memory from my childhood. And it was like the last time I felt this was then. Mm-hmm. And it was mind-blowing for me that it was the first time the adult to childhood connection, I'd kind of made that and how it's still affecting me. And it was fascinating and I've been a believer ever since.
Yeah, I think in couples, everyone, a lot of people, I won't say everyone, have heard of the perspective of inner child.
Yes.
And, I want to simplify it for listeners that it might be a little bit confused what we're talking about, parts of self, but it's different versions of us. And the best way to understand this is the children's movie Inside Out, which is a Disney movie. And it's basically this perspective that different parts of self can kind of hijack the controls of our mind and have us operating a certain way. And relationship is where that shows up just so profoundly.
Yep. Yep.
reminds us of mom and dad and their relationship and this and that. There's just so many ways that brings things up.
And we let them in the closest, so they're the most capable of triggering these things.
Absolutely. And we spend so much time together. I mean, you have children together. Your subconscious minds just learn all the things that get one another.
Yep.
And there's something magical about humans, how we just attract the perfect person to bring up all our stuff to work through it. It's like, I always say humans are self-healing organisms, and we attract the perfect person to stir up the things so that we can see it and work with it.
100%. 100%. Do you? How often do you just say, "Well, you deserve this. You attracted this"? In your coaching?
My partner actually says that a lot to me.
Really? I've heard you get the kids you deserve. You ever heard that before?
Oh yeah, I bet.
Like it's funny. We'll I have friends, with young kids or whatever that running them ragged sometimes. But it's funny. We'll talk about it. Like, you used to do that. You did that to your mom. I remember you as a kid. It's kind of funny. Who are some of the people that influence you? You mentioned Joe Dispenza. Who are some of your favorite people that have shaped and continue to shape?
Yeah, Joe Dispenza right now. Eckhart Tolle was a huge one. Deepak Chopra was like the first book my dad gave me. Dick Schwartz is the parts work teacher.
Okay.
There's a feminine teacher, Perry Chase, in my life that taught me a ton. Carolyn Elliott was a huge impact. Wrote a book called Existential Kink that really changed my life. Bruce Lipton, leading in epigenetics, really powerful. I think I could go on and on.
You probably could, yeah. Are you a fan of David Data and John Wineland?
I haven't got into their work a ton, but I'm finding myself moving in that direction more now. The Way of the Superior Man, et cetera, et cetera. Getting more into that. It's my time that I'm really coming back into the fiery masculine. I really went into the feminine, deep into the feminine portal for a while, 2 years. Like, my whole time in Mexico was really on feminine teachings, which has been profound. And now I'm moving back to really pure masculine teachings.
I've noticed recently there's a lot of, coming back to, you're saying you're doing work on the feminine. I've seen a lot of teachers of the opposite sex that have really devoted them to mastery of. So female teachers teaching on the masculine energy and what drives it, and then same vice versa. And I think there's something powerful in that. There's almost something more receptive, I feel like, at least for me personally, when there's a man saying, "Hey, here's how to better understand the female energy," and he's clearly an expert on it. There's something more receptive for me than a female, because I feel like he understands both.
Totally.
Right? So he understands me and them, and yet still this is the message.
I agree. And that's why I'm really switching back to, I feel like I learned a ton. I'm still learning from that teacher, and I'm realizing a lot of that is I'm bringing that in my relationship with my partner. It's benefited me in how I relate to the feminine,
right,
to women, to feminine energy. I just understanding it. And then that helps me, okay, now I understand and work with masculine energy more. And I'm able to I feel like I'm able to work with men or women. I love working with women too, because I've been sitting in circles of men since I was 13 years old. I have the inner knowledge of how a lot of men see and experience the world. I love translating that for either side.
What would, if someone's listening and they're curious about your work, they want to learn a little bit more, about what you do, what would be the next step for them?
I think either checking out my website or looking at my Instagram. Either my Instagram handle is Ean Wood, so EANWOOD.
Okay.
My website's eanwood.com. But those are honestly just reaching out and having a conversation from either of those platforms. It's kind of, when you learn business, it's do the one thing. Find your avatar, find your niche, market to them. And I'm one of those people, my passion is so many things. So I do this dance constantly of honing in on the thing that I do. And then it's like, just to be true to myself is like, I love to work with so many different people through so many different modalities. And that's that quote you read at the beginning. I'm so grateful you brought that up, because that is the truth. Is I'm just focused on raising the quality of life for people. And that's, I think most of us are past the means of survival. Many people's minds would convince them otherwise. But if we're not struggling for food, water,
100%.
shelter every day, we're past survival. And then it's all perception. How much love, joy, connection we feel for life is all in our mind, all in our body, all in our perception.
And is that part of the work, or is that primarily the work that you're doing with people, is to help them, if there's some sort of a barrier to essentially seeing the world that way?
It's funny because I work with such a variety of people, people working on huge business goals, people working on creation, development, whatever it is. It's all based upon what's going on inside of us. If someone, I'm working with someone, they're trying to do some insane number of B2B business by the end of the year. You can work with coaches that are focused on the actions, the goals, and we do focus on that. But the beliefs are the biggest thing in the way. The perception of reality, the understanding of what I need to do to get something done, what the mind believes about creation is fundamentally important in the same way as the actions are. So I work with business people that want to make more money, that want to expand, grow their business, and will focus on their value, their experience with personal value, will experience with their beliefs, the limiting beliefs, and it's just, it all impacts all of it.
100%. If you could go back in time to when you first started your business, when you first went to basically away from getting a consistent paycheck, if you could give yourself a piece of advice at the beginning of that journey, what would you say?
I'm trying to remember the year, what I would have told myself to invest in. It was 2020. I would have said invest in hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer, toilet paper, and Peloton stock, right?
Yeah. No, I would have said try for more and more outlandish things. That was a teaching that really impacted me, and I learned, and I knew it from snowboarding. It was one of the ways I made it to as far as I did was I just asked for crazy things. I would just ask companies, hey, I want to ride for you. I want to do this video project. I want you to sponsor this thing. I would just ask for outlandish things. I would put it out there.
Yeah.
And when I switched into my business, there was this timidness because it was new. It was different. And I would have just encouraged myself, just go for it. Bigger, it's okay if you fail. It's okay if it doesn't work. You're going to learn in the process. So go for it in an even more exaggerated version.
I love it. It's beautiful. There's so many, I've even experienced that myself, where you're almost surprised when you get the yes, right? Or sometimes you ask for it and they say, sure. And you're like, wait, really? That's it? Just yes? Like, what was the big holdup on me not asking for this sooner if it was going to be that simple?
Totally.
And sometimes it happens.
A lot of the times I realize when I like the most outlandish thing, wow, that's wild. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, let's do this. I love it. Beautiful. Okay, what about if you could give one piece of advice to someone who they're thinking about taking a big risk, right? Making some sort of a big change in their life right now. Maybe it's entrepreneurial, maybe it's something relationship-wise, relocation, whatever the case may be. What would you say to them?
My partner is going to love that I say this. Take care of your nervous system. Whatever, to the inner world, change is the most terrifying thing because the mind loves familiarity. It's predictable. Oh, I know what happens here. I know the ingredients. I know the elements. I know that I'm going to be safe. And so when any big change is happening, if we're working with calming the nervous system, caring for the nervous system, putting in any sort of thing that brings in safety in a conscious way, we're going to be able to do that thing less. I'll use a word from Joe Dispenza. We're going to be able to do those things more coherently. Our mind, body, the way that it's all communicating is going to flow and work better. Our mind is actually going to work better if we're not feeling the survival, like anxiety, overwhelmed. Our mind works like crap when we go into that survival state. So in big change, it's matching the actions of what you're doing with caring for yourself simultaneously to remember that you're safe and you're going through change, and there's just going to be kind of a stimulation to it.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Keeping your mind clear, and then you can make better decisions.
Doing the cold plunge, getting the exercise in, getting time in silence. I mean, I have a daily practice still where I just for a minute sit down and just go, like close my eyes, and I'm like, all right, there's food in the fridge, there's running water, there's a roof over my head, no one's trying to bomb the country I'm in right now, I'm safe. And I just like anchor that in my body, because I believe we live in a world that tries to program us with fear and anxiety. It makes us better consumers. It makes us, easier to be in the system and just feeding it. So it's like, I'm trying to always build that stability in myself so that my mind works better. I'm more present and focused with what I'm creating.
Amen, brother. Amen. Ean, dude, this has been a true pleasure. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out and having a conversation with us, man.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a treat.
Make sure to check out Ean Wood on Instagram. Shoot him a DM. Ask away. And
see you in Charleston.
We'll see you in Charleston.
Beautiful.
Hey, y'all. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like or follow or subscribe. Whatever platform you're on, just hit the button to make sure you don't miss any future episodes.
Yep, and please help us grow the channel by sharing it with someone else who might enjoy it as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.